Ba-da-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. Ba-da-ba-dum. Ba-ba-ba-bum-bum-bum-bum. Bum-bum-bum. Interesting news. Interesting news. I usually don't do 2 live streams in a week, but I was like, "Hey, what the hell? It's a special occasion because there's some interesting news." Let's see. Are we live on LinkedIn? Or is LinkedIn gonna be difficult for us? Let's see. Bum, bum, bum. Yep, and there I am. Yes, we are in fact live. Okay, so interesting news. Interesting news. So there was an acquisition that happened. Hey, everybody, welcome on in. Feel free to drop some questions because I'm going to be a little bit more freestyling this with this one. So I want to talk about this acquisition and why it's interesting, right? Because anytime these acquisitions happen, it's not just like out of the blue and the company's like, yeah, what the hell? Let's just buy this company for $500 million, right? Happened for a very specific reason. So the news was Zoll buys Itamar. Itamar is a very interesting Israeli company. I feel like so many great MedTech companies come out of Israel. Like they definitely have something there. I worked for an Israeli company, Mazor Robotics. So they buy them for $538 million. Okay. Why? Right? So Itamar, for those of you who don't know, is and let me pull up my notes here. This is the other thing I'm trying to get better about notes. So while I'm pulling that up, so Itamar is a medical device and a digital health company. Okay. So they focused on sleep apnea, but on the diagnosis of it, right? So sleep apnea, again, people who have to wear the mask, they have problems breathing at night and everything. It can lead to a lot of issues, right? So what Itamar did is they have this thing called Watchpad, and so they help diagnose sleep apnea at home, right? Why is that important? Because if you've had a sleep study done, you would know that it is kind of difficult to do it because essentially you have to do it in like somebody's office. It's awkward. It works fine. I had a sleep study done myself. But what Itamar did was they said, hey, we're going to give the patient a wearable device. They do it at home, right? And you get the information, right? So this is really great. And especially during the pandemic when everybody was at home, right? You can't go into to do a sleep study. So this really helped with their adoption, right? Plus they have an extremely talented CEO, Gilad Glick, super talented guy, and just a lot of charisma and everything. I haven't met him personally. This is just everybody that I've spoken to said this about him, right? And so that's what they did. Sleep apnea companies like ResMed, Philips, all those big players loved Itamar. Why? Because it's a diagnostic tool that was helping more people who had sleep apnea get diagnosed, and then they would go buy their sleep apnea machines, right? So why would Zoll buy them, right? Why not like a ResMed or something? Which I was thinking that too. So the reason why is that if Zoll is focused a lot on the cardiovascular space, right, which has really been growing a lot. It's been a big issue in every country, but especially here in the U.S., right? So if we look at timelines, right, let's look at the timeline. So back in April 2021, so this year, just a couple of quarters ago, Zoll acquires a company called Respicardia, right, who make an implantable neurostimulator device, right, for treating central sleep apnea, right? Now, central sleep apnea differs from obstructive because, based on the two terms you just heard, obstructive has to do with the actual esophagus, like muscles there relaxing too much, or everything, and central sleep apnea means the brain's just not communicating well with that. Now, while they are different, OSA and CSA, right, they can occur at the same time, which is called mixed sleep apnea, right? I don't have enough knowledge in the space, but I would imagine that differentiating between the two sometimes can be difficult because you can have both, right? So many patients who have CSA also happen to have heart disease, especially heart failure. And based on just my quick scientific Google search, like on Medscape, 5 to 15% of the people who have positive airway pressure treatment for obstructive sleep apnea get central sleep apnea. I'm going to say that one more time. Because when I looked at central sleep apnea, there's not a lot of people who get it, but 5 to 15% of the people who have the positive airway pressure treatment, right, the sleep mask to solve obstructive sleep apnea, they get central sleep apnea, right? And then within that population, those people are at a much higher risk for hospitalization and even death because, again, sleep is important, right? Now, who's Respicardia? So Respicardia, okay, developed this device called Remedy ELX system, and this treats CSA in adults. It's an implantable device that activates automatically each night to stimulate the phrenic nerve, which is in the chest, and that sends signals to the breathing muscles in the diaphragm to help restore normal breathing, right? They get acquired in April. August of this year, Zoll receives FDA approval for this device. So to date, it is the only FDA approved implantable device that can treat moderate to severe central sleep apnea in adult patients with reduced cardiac function, right? All right, now let's look at Itmar. Itmar is both, as I mentioned, medical device company and digital health company. So I mentioned that because there's a lot of data involved with this. Okay. Now, when they come up with Watchpad, right? This is the only FDA cleared device, or I don't know if it's the only one, but it's an FDA cleared device that helps you to essentially diagnose from home, right? So let's put all this together. Why is this important? And I think a lot of you are getting ahead. And again, keep the comments coming in because I'm seeing them from like YouTube and Twitter, LinkedIn. Feel free to chime in. Here's why. Zoll, now let's say they deal with patients. Do you have CSA or OSA, right? Well, let's use Watchpad, which is an at-home diagnostic device, okay? And I don't think you need to be a sleep center to be using this, right? That's the other thing. This can be used by primary care doctors, which really opens up the market, and of course puts competition with sleep centers. Then you get diagnosed with central sleep apnea. Well, guess what? They just fed that pathway, right? They developed the diagnosis to treatment pathway themselves, and now they have that implantable device. Now, granted, there's fewer people with CSA than OSA, but could it be argued that if you go through this pathway numerous times ad infinitum, you get all this data, and you say, hey, you know what? United Healthcare Insurance or whatever insurance company, based on this patient's profile, let's say 55-year-old male who used to be a smoker, at risk for cardiovascular disease, or even has certain cardiac issues, they have sleep apnea. There's no point to diagnosis as obstructive sleep apnea because the moment we put them on positive pressure devices, they're going to get CSA eventually. Let's just get straight to this because that's going to be a lot cheaper and better for the patient. So that's interesting because now ResMed, Philips, I've just got the news today. And so this is literally an hour's worth of my research. I need to dive deeper in this. They're going to have to come up with something like some kind of implantable as well for CSA. Otherwise, like that puts their entire, puts a good chunk of their market at risk, right? And I'm predicting in 2022 you will see some other, and again, I don't know if there's other devices. I'm sure there are that are similar competitors to Watchpad for Itamar. I would imagine ResMed and Philips will, if not already, start looking into tuck-in deals, so acquisitions of 500 million some odd dollars or less to get tucked into the core business, right? So Carlene, I hope I pronounced it right, says moves to step into the RTM space. Can you tell me what the RTM space is? And by the way, what would be fun, guys? Caroline, stay on. I think I can bring Caroline on as a guest. Wouldn't that be fun? I think I can do that. Maybe not. All right. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that later. Caroline, if you're still on, can you please tell me what the RTM space is? Otherwise, I'm just gonna look it up. What is RTM? This is a problem with the medical space. There's just so many acronyms and abbreviations. So, anyway, so that's interesting. Now, here's the other thing that you have to keep in mind, and I leave this up because I feel like I go to this all the time. Let's look at this. All right. The behavior change model, right? Okay. Forget about the MD at the top, right? Behavior change happens on these two axes, motivation and ease, right? Motivation, you can say that's the individual incentive and social norm. So we got that motivation part there with sleep apnea. Here's the thing, the ease, opportunity and ability. All right. Most people have the ability to go get a sleep study. You just go fall asleep. Maybe not though, right? So I would say the old sleep studies could be somewhere around here, right? Where the motivation is there, people want to get traded for treated for sleep. They're motivated, but the ease is not there because the opportunity, let's say somebody does not have a sleep center close by to them, or the ability, which is, hey, they do have a sleep center close by to them. The problem is that they're sleeping in some different location. They can't really fall asleep. So you get false positives, right? You just have issues. What Itmar is doing essentially is solving the ease so people can get these sleep studies at home in the comfort of their own bed. That's a big deal because then that's how you get the behavior change. The behavior change being if somebody thinks they have sleep apnea, most people don't want to do it because of the headache of like, I got to go and spend the night somewhere. This actually changes that. So you've increased, again, the size of this market. And I have to look at the market research reports. I would imagine there's going to be significant growth in this market over the next few years, right? Carlene said, remote therapeutic monitoring. Yes, absolutely. That is exactly what this goes towards, because essentially, so RMT is remote therapeutic monitoring. Thank you, Carlene. So essentially, that's where this is going. And if you think about medicine in general, I mean, why do you think so much money went into these digital mental health companies, right? In a way, they're sort of remote psychiatric monitoring, right? And so making it easier for patients to get access to care, right, is going to be important. Plus, the other interesting aspect of this, let me go back to this over here. The other interesting aspect of this is that keep in mind, most of the time when you do sleep studies, like you need a sleep center to do this. There's a whole infrastructure built around this. But if you're a primary care doctor, or an internal medicine doctor, or again, a lot of sleep centers are run by cardiologists. You're a cardiologist, you don't want to do a sleep center. You want to have this opportunity. This gives you that opportunity because remote monitoring reimburses really well and quite high. This is the one area that a lot of physicians need to look. If you're a physician listening to this, you need to look more into remote monitoring for your practice, no matter what you're doing, because there is a really good reimbursement pathway for that. If you're more interested in it, Dr. Sandra White's, very, very sharp lady. She runs a private practice group to coach physicians on this. If you go to the practicebuildingmd.com, she has some blogs on there about remote monitoring. I highly recommend you go look at that. But yeah, that's what this really opens up. And so I thought this was a really interesting acquisition. Again, acquisitions don't happen for the sake of just happening, right? And especially I think in the last 10 years, MedTech has gotten even more conservative when it comes to acquisitions, because when you do acquire these companies, the more complicated the technology, the more difficult it is to integrate into the core business, right? It's not like acquiring an implant company. Even that's difficult, right? And so with these transformational technologies that are digital, you have data involved in something, it's got to really make sense. And so from a clinical pathway, or clinical pathway, this makes a lot of sense for ZOLL, because now they have a diagnostic and they have a treatment. More specific, that diagnostic is remote monitoring, right? So that's really interesting to see. The one question mark I do have, no offense, ZOLL, is how well are they going to do at marketing this kind of suite, right? ZOLL is a very big company. It's similar to like any of the other big box medtech companies. And so they're not exactly known for like amazing marketing. And when I define marketing, it's, commercial marketing, not product management, but actually like, are you good at patient education through social media, developing communities, thought leadership, these kind of things, right? Because again, you're talking about behavior change here, right? And so what will be interesting is that will they do a good job with their reps educating physicians about, hey, here's the remote monitoring that you're going to use with your patients. Here's how it's going to help diagnose things. And then once it's diagnosed, okay, here is the only implantable device to treat this, right? So it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to take some questions to see if anybody has some questions. I know I did this at a weird time of day, so I know people are going to hop off. No questions. Okay, perfect. Carlene, thanks for joining and sharing those thoughts. Okay, so and by the way, I made a post about this. So if anybody knows and somebody who's got deep expertise on the sleep apnea, remote monitoring, when it comes to sleep, this whole area, have them reach out to me. I kind of want to interview them and get a little bit deeper in this topic. All right, thanks everybody. See you next time.